YouTube, and welcome to Retro Buyer's Guide, a show where I talk about collecting retro games, price trends for retro games, and help you decide whether or not it's worthy to add to your collection. I'm your host Mike, and today I'm going to be talking about Sega Saturn imports. Now, the Sega Saturn was not as commercially successful in the United States as it was in Japan, so there were a lot more games released in Japan, and there are some really quality titles. If you own a Sega Saturn console and you're not importing games, then you need to take a second look at the library that's available out there. Not to say there wasn't some good titles on the US side. I mean, we did get things like Knights and Clockwork Knight, which was pretty good. It also has a sequel. But over in Japan, there were all kinds of games coming out, and they had much better cases like this one for Panzer Dragoon II Zwei. If you're getting into importing games on your Sega Saturn, the first thing you want to do is pick up one of these, the Action Replay Plus 4M Auto, which will cost you around $20 to $30. Aside from letting you play Japanese imports, you can also back up your saves to the cartridge, as well as activate cheats for certain games. It also serves as the 1MB and 4MB RAM expansion cartridge for Capcom fighting games and Metal Slug on the Saturn. So if you own a Sega Saturn, this cartridge is a must purchase. It gives you access to the incredible library of Japanese games, as well as serving all those other functions, and besides, it's just $20 to $30, so it's a no-brainer. The first game we're going to look at is Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon Super S, or Sailor Moon Various Emotion. Not emotions, emotion, singular. I guess if I had one various emotion to describe this game, it would be sadness. Aside from this kind of cute little intro video, it's a typical 2D fighter from the era. The controls are just super janky, and I can't stress that enough. I mean, it kind of makes the game downright unplayable at times. You can choose from 10 characters. There are special moves throughout, but I could never pull them off consistently. This game can be had for around, $20 or so, but I don't recommend it. Honestly, I think I got my copy through a lot, or part of a lot, where there were some other games that I wanted within there, but it's just not worth the money, in my opinion. Next up, we have Dodonpachi, an excellent vertical shooter by Atlas that looks great on the Saturn. You can choose between 3 ships with different attacks as you make your way through several levels with multiple explosions. Almost everything explodes, which is great, and it really shows off the Saturn hardware.
Okay, the countdown begins.
I had a lot of fun with this game while I was making this video. As a matter of fact, I think it's the one I played the most when I was capturing footage. Just be prepared to pay a little bit for this title, as copies on eBay can go for around $50 to $60 complete. Still, I think it's well worth the money, and if you're into shmups, then you should definitely check this game out. It's a blast.
Alright, capture the target attack. The mission starts now. Are you ready?
Now, what would a Saturn import video be without Cho Aniki? The full name is Cho Aniki something, I can't pronounce it. But this game is just, where do I even start? Well, I guess we could start with the weird homoerotic digitized Japanese men sprinkled throughout this horizontal shooter. It's fairly terrifying. This is the first level here, and you can see you play a rapidly turning man in Speedos shooting things. I don't know what's even going on here. It's just, wow. There are some weird floating globules that you have to collect from down enemies, which I can only assume is... Oh, never mind. Anyways, this is the first boss, and, well, you can kind of just get a feel for what's going on. The whole thing is sort of Monty Python meets a gay Japanese game designer's wet dream. This isn't really that great of a shooter. It's average at best, so this is something you would definitely be picking up to play just for how freaking weird it is, and it's plenty weird. A copy will cost you somewhere between $30 to $40 on eBay if you want to pony up for it. So, next up is the excellent Elevator Action Returns. I love the NES game, so when I learned there was an arcade sequel that got ported to the Saturn, I was all about it. And when I finally got a chance to play it, it lived up to my expectations. Taito did such a great job with this game. It's filled with all the excellent arcade action that you remember, and it's just a lot of fun. A copy on the Saturn, though, is fairly uncommon, and it will cost you over $100. Here's a pro tip. You can also pick it up as part of the Taito Legends 2 collection, which was released in the US for both the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, and I recommend picking up either versions of those collections because this game is just great. Princess Crown is an excellent side-scrolling action RPG by Atlus released for the Japanese Sega Saturn. It features beautiful 2D hand-drawn artwork by art director George Kamatani. And interesting fun fact, Kamatani and other team members would later go on to form the studio Vanillaware, which released other critically acclaimed games such as Odin Sphere, Muramasa the Demon Blade, and recently Dragon's Crown for the Vita and PlayStation 3. Dragon's Crown is actually the spiritual successor to this game. But anyway, you play a princess named Grazdriel as you travel through your kingdom, solving problems and fighting enemies. At least that's what I gathered from watching the cutscenes. I can't really read Japanese, so I have no idea what's going on. Although I do know there is a website that actually translates each line of dialogue that you can follow along on the web if you want to pick this game up. There's also a PSP version, but it's going to cost you about the same to import it as you would be on the Saturn, so I would stick with the Saturn version to play it on a larger screen. And finally, we have the treasure classic Radiant Silvergun. What can I say about Radiant Silvergun that hasn't already been said a million times? It's one of the best games for the Saturn, if not the best game for the Saturn. I think a lot of shmup enthusiasts would agree with me there. It features all of the fast-paced action that Treasure's known for. It also has a very interesting control scheme. Every button on the Sega Saturn 6-button controller does a different firing mechanic. And it's a lot of fun to mix and match them up depending on what situation you're in. Although, for me, it got a little confusing remembering which button did what, but I think that maybe is because I just haven't played it enough. The downside to Radiant Silvergun is it is not easy to get a copy of this for the Sega Saturn. It's one of the most expensive games, if not the most expensive game. I'm not sure about that. But if you're looking for a copy of this complete, it's going to run you over $150 easy. Luckily, Microsoft released a port of Radiant Silvergun for the Xbox Live Arcade in 2011, so you can pick up a copy of this game for $15, and I think that's well worth the price. If you're a fan of Treasure or just shmups in general, this is definitely the game for you. I hope you enjoyed episode 2 of Retro Buyer's Guide, and I'll be back in a week with a new episode. Until then, happy collecting!